What if all Baba Vanga predictions came true? Baba Vanga was born in Bulgaria on October 3rd, 1911, and she was known as a mystic, clairvoyant, and herbalist. Although she passed away in 1996, she is still remembered for her many predictions about the future, as it is said that around 85% of them have come true. Now, there were a lot of predictions made by Baba Vanga, so if we went over each one individually, we'd be here for far too long, but today, let's take a look at some of the larger ones. Firstly, I think it's important to note that there are a lot of predictions that have been said to have come from Baba Vanga that didn't. Vanga is often credited with predicting things like the death of Stalin or the Chernobyl disaster, as well as the victory of Boris Yeltsin in the 1996 Russian presidential election. While these would be quite large predictions, there's no evidence that any of these ever actually came from her, and instead it is believed that they may have been falsely attributed to her throughout the years. Maybe she did predict these things. I mean, I wasn't really around to confirm that, but there is just no official documentation of these predictions having come from her. Okay, so now that we mentioned some things that she most likely didn't predict, we can talk about some things that she did. More specifically, let's talk about some of the predictions she made that didn't end up coming true for the last decade or so. Vanga predicted that in 2010 there would be a world war that would begin, lasting through until October of 2014. Well, in 2021 we can all confirm that obviously didn't happen. In 2011 she predicted that because of the radioactive fallout from the chemical warfare of the war, there would be no vegetation or animals surviving in the northern hemisphere, and by 2014 most people would be suffering from things like ulcers, skin cancer, and other diseases also related to the chemical warfare, and she said that by 2016 Europe would be almost completely empty. Okay, that's a lot to talk about. I mean, other than the fact that none of this happened, there are some things that if they had occurred, she probably actually got right. If there was a world war in 2010, there undoubtedly would have been chemical warfare, and there is a highly likely chance that the fallout from that would have been seen across the globe. Vanga predicted that the war would start out normally, but then it would gradually become a more dangerous nuclear war after some time, and that is a pretty likely scenario, to be completely honest. We all know how dangerous nuclear weapons can be. I mean, we've seen the devastating effects that it can have, so it would make sense that we would try to hold off on using them since they could easily destroy Earth and all of the living creatures on it. But of course, as things escalate and more egos get involved, someone will inevitably throw the first nuclear punch, and then it will be over from there. Following her predictions, the next things that would come would be a part of the nuclear fallout, and that would be the disappearance of all animals and vegetation in the northern hemisphere. From a climate perspective alone, I cannot imagine or even begin to articulate the havoc that this would wreak on the world, and it would most likely render it unlivable, but for the sake of this video, let's pretend or assume that we could continue on living, even through that tumultuous situation. So most people who once inhabited the northern hemisphere would likely be moving somewhere to the southern hemisphere. Considering the fact that the northern hemisphere is home to 6.4 billion people, which is roughly 87% of the world's population, when I say that there would be a mass migration of people, that might even be putting it lightly. For those who can't move in a post-World War III world, there would simply just be nothing to eat, and if the nuclear contamination was bad enough to kill off all the plant and animal life, it's probably safe to assume that there isn't any uncontaminated drinking water either. So I guess what I'm saying is that according to these predictions, it's either time to move south or prepare for the end. Now we can jump forward to the 2014 with her predictions of nuclear-associated illnesses rising up. I mean, based on everything we just talked about, this really does make sense. Using a real-world example of something that did really happen, it is estimated that after the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, there were around 20,000 cases of thyroid cancer reported in children who had been exposed to the radiation at the time of the accident. Approximately 5,000 of these thyroid cancer cases alone are likely attributable to children drinking fresh milk containing radioactive iodine from cows who had eaten contaminated grass in the first few weeks following the accident. Going along with her predictions, she suggests that after the war there would be a rise of people suffering from skin cancer. Currently, when caught early, skin cancer has a pretty high survival rate. When not caught early and the disease has a chance to spread deeper into the skin and to other parts of the body, things tend to get a bit trickier. If Vanga's prediction came true, this would mean that there would most likely be a lot more testing for skin cancer to hopefully catch as many cases as early as possible, but with the mass migration south and a lot of displaced people, and not to mention what a world war would do to the global economy, it is likely that there would be many people that wouldn't really have access to proper healthcare. I mean, more than there is now. In 2016, Vanga predicted that Europe would be almost completely empty, but with what we discussed previously about people needing to flee the northern hemisphere, this totally checks out and makes a lot of sense. If in 2011 there is no vegetation or wildlife left, by 2016 it seems perfectly reasonable that those who had the chance to leave would have by then, and those who couldn't most likely would have passed away, leaving the very few who have learned to adapt in whatever way, if that were even possible. So now that we've covered a few of the more recent predictions of Baba Vanga that didn't come true, we can take a look at some of the future predictions she has and what will happen if some of those end up coming true. Firstly, she predicted that soon, in 2023, there will be a little bit of a change in the orbit of the Earth. That prediction does seem kind of insane, but as it turns out, around every 100,000 years, this apparently happens naturally, so maybe 2023 is the time that this change is bound to occur. Apparently with these changes comes a shift in the Earth's climate. Usually the smaller the change in orbit, the bigger the change in climate, and vice versa. So with a prediction calling for a slight shift in the Earth's orbit, we could reasonably deduce that if this prediction were to come true, we would see a large change in the climate as well. The next large prediction of hers is set for 2028, which is the year she claims that we will create a new energy source, probably a controlled thermonuclear reaction, world hunger is gradually being overcome, and we will be launching a manned spacecraft to Venus. Apparently 2028 is a big year. If we were able to find a way to get our energy from a thermonuclear fusion, it would fix a lot of our energy problems. It's a huge if on whether or not we could actually get to a place where we could use it, but if we did, it would really mean big things. World hunger is something that we have struggled with for years, and while we technically have the resources available to end it, we simply just don't. So that really would be a Vanga prediction that would be nice to see come true. The final part of this 2028 prediction is actually a little eerie. While there aren't currently any planned manned space missions to Venus because of the extreme atmosphere that exists on the planet, there are currently 2 missions that NASA announced earlier this year that are planned to head to Venus sometime from 2028 to 2030. Both the Da Vinci Plus mission and the Veritas mission will explore Venus and the atmosphere as well as the geological history in an attempt to learn how it formed, why it evolved so differently than Earth, and to see if the planet ever had an ocean. In 2033, Vanga predicted that the polar ice caps would be melting and that ocean levels around the world would rise, but that is already the case, so I suppose this is one prediction that came a little early. In 2043, she predicted the world economy would be thriving, and in 2046 she predicted that any bodies could be manufactured, which many people have anticipated means that cloning is something that is becoming more widely accepted. This is another one that makes sense because we already have the science to clone living beings, it just is still something that freaks a lot of people out. So if this prediction were to come true, we would see a lot more cloning happening, and I'm sure for very unnecessary reasons, but the prediction also might possibly suggest that we were able to clone organs, which may be a really useful scientific advancement. This could potentially help many people who need different organ transplants and could potentially eliminate the need for someone to pass in order for someone else to receive their organs. Vanga predicted that by 2076 we would be living in a classless society, and truly we are currently on a path that just may be headed that way. Of course, like all of these predictions, it is something that only time will tell, but there certainly has, lately, been an increase in people speaking up about the class divide and calling for an end to that. Vanga's predictions continue on for hundreds of years, and like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, if we sat here talking about all of her individual predictions, we'd be here for a lot longer than we have, so I'll just highlight a few more that she has for the future. She claims that in 2100 we will have an artificial sun that lights the dark side of the Earth, so I guess no nighttime anymore? In 2125, she says that Hungary will receive signals from space. In 2130, there will be a colony underwater, and by 2195, they will be fully developed and have food and energy in abundance. The next couple hundred years there are a lot of space threats and advancements in exploration, and in 3000 there is a new prophet that comes and organizes a new church, but also that there is another war because humans begin to fight over the dwindling resources available. The final Baba Vanga prediction comes in 5079, as this is when she predicts the world will end. None of us have any way of telling whether or not this is an accurate prediction or not, and it's pretty safe to say that none of us will be here to find out either. By this time, however, it was also predicted that humans will have found a way to achieve immortality, which means that despite the world ending, it is entirely possible that the humans have just moved on to another planet, maybe in a different solar system entirely. Maybe the aliens we previously contacted help us out with the move. Either way, if humans really did become immortal, it totally makes sense that the world would not be able to sustain everyone anymore. Alright guys, this has been a bit of a look into what may happen if all Baba Vanga predictions came true. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and let me know if you think Baba Vanga's predictions are the work of the supernatural, or if you think they're just a bunch of random guesses. Thanks for watching today's Life's Biggest Questions video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I'll see you next time for another crazy question. Bye!